you know, toys strewn all over the place, and, teenagers that won't talk to us, and all the mundane stuff that we go through every day. But it is important. It is important that we raise our children to follow God and carry that torch on. This calling is of utmost importance, even though we might lose sight of it. And we have to take it seriously. There was a time in my life, earlier in my walk with God, where my son and I were part of a home missions church. And it was, I would say, the work that I was allowed to do there was the most fulfilling in my walk with God. And I head up Sunday school, mainly. That was my main thing there. And I loved my kids. And I developed relationships with them. Most of them, their parents weren't in church, and they came from horrible home situations. And I could reach out to them, and I would get involved with them outside of church. And I would go to their school functions and their graduations and things. And I loved being there. And I had such an ability to use my passions and my gifts with them. And we did skits and everything like that. And it was a wonderful time for me. It was highly fulfilling. And we were there for about 6 years, and there came a point in time where my son was, becoming a teenager. He was needing a youth group, and they didn't have anything stable there, anyone to take that role in that place. And so I had to make a decision. And, I thought about, there's a scripture where Jesus said, what does it profit a man to gain the whole world and lose his own soul in the process? And so I applied it. That kept stirring in me, and I applied it to myself, and I thought, what will it profit me if I gain my whole class and I lose my son in the process? And I can't do that. And so it was probably about the hardest decision I've ever had to make in my life. But I left that church to go to a church that did have a stable youth group, because it was what my son needed. It was what was best for him. There are times that we have to make sacrifices and take this role seriously, because it is the most important. Now, maybe you're not a parent. That doesn't mean that you don't matter. That doesn't mean that you don't have a role to play or that you're not important. God will empower us to do his work, whatever he has called us to do. Now, during the time of Judges that we're getting into with Gideon, the culture of Israel in that time was not really any different than ours. Okay? There was a overall rejection of God and his ways. There was lawlessness. Scripture tells us that every man did what was right in his own eyes. And that is what we live in today, and that is a horrendously scary place to be. That everybody's going to sit there and decide for themselves what's morally right and wrong, what's morally acceptable or not. We can decide whatever we want, but it's not going to fly in the end, because this is God's world, and he decides what's right and wrong. And we either fall in line or we pay the consequences. God is still looking for people who are not perfect, but willing to answer the call and be committed to the task at hand. Be committed to what he has called us to do in our generation. And so I'm asking you tonight to recommit yourself to this calling and to Jesus, and to ask him to open your eyes and to be sensitive to what it is you could do or where you should be if you don't know. if you have been running from God, if you are living right now in the consequences of your own inaction and disobedience, there is hope for you. If you're still living and breathing, you have an ability to change your life around and to come back to God and to get back in line, and He will take you back. And that is our lesson for tonight. I thank you guys for.
Thank you, sir.
So, Jonathan,
That's me.
that's you. Did you want to add anything or make any comments about?
I have a question.
Yeah,
Um,
I hope I can answer.
did Moses kill his wife?
No.
She was a Midianite. When God said kill the Midianites, did that include Moses' wife?
No, because she was married to him, and by law, the two become one.
Is that not what all the Israelites did, though? Like, they took the women and married them all so they couldn't die?
No, they weren't married.
Oh.
They were just going.
God, just side plates?
Yeah. So, yeah.
No, the only real thing I wanted to add was, like, or just talk about, I guess, was... Because that's, I don't know, that's always been a very... I'm glad you brought it up a little bit. Just about, like how it might not be somebody's job to reach 100,000.
Yeah.
But in everything I was taught growing up, everything I learned from church is, like, ingrained in me that I need to be everything to everybody or God hates me if I don't.
Right.
You know what I mean?
Right.
Like, I'm weak and tired, but it doesn't matter because they need something, so go do it.
Yeah.
You know?
Yeah.
But then I grew up and read the Bible, and one of the most beautiful, and it might seem weird that I say this, but one of the most beautiful verses to me is, I want to say it's in Acts. Peter was doing his I'm the foundation of the church things, and some people came up to Peter and was like, there's widows that are hungry and they need you to feed them. What are you doing? You're supposed to be a Christian. You're supposed to be a Jesus guy. You're not helping them. And Peter literally said, who am I to wait tables?
Yep.
Go find somebody to do it.
Yep, that's not my thing.
That's not my job. That's not my job, bro.
Yep.
Go find somebody to do it. I'm busy doing what God told me to do.
Yep.
So, like, it's just such, it's printed in the Bible. That's why it's so beautiful to me. Is just all these over expectations and burdens that are heavily laid onto people, including myself from experience, like, that don't need to be there. Like, you don't need to be everything to everybody. You don't need to be the one that reaches 100,000 people.
Come on.
You let go of everything and you look at God and say, well, what do you want?
Right.
And you're going to be shocked at how little God says.
Yeah.
Because you expect God to drop this mountain on your back of because that's what everybody else did.
Yeah. Yeah.
But God will say, why don't you go for a walk and pray for this person?
Right.
And you're like, okay, what else? And there's just silence. That's it. Just go for a walk and pray for that person, bro.
Yeah.
And you get done with that and you're like, what do I do now? And God's like, well, why don't you take it easy for the rest of the day? Maybe there'll be something tomorrow. And you're like, what? That's it?
Yeah.
You know, and so it's just this, like, new, huge, like, beautiful new experience of Jesus literally said, come unto me, all you who are weary and heavy laden, and I will give you rest. And this is literally it's the one who made you and knows what you can handle. Right. Choosing what you do, not 50 million pastors and the subpotentate United pastor head. You know what I mean? Like, just all these people giving you all these jobs, and that's just what I wanted to talk about, because I'm very passionate about that because of how mentally scarred and damaged I am from being overworked and overpushed and perfectionism and all that. So I just think that's a really beautiful thing to talk about.
Yeah. Thank you.
Thank you, sir.
Mm-hmm. Miss Debbie?
Okay. This is an interesting. I've got two things to say, but anyhow, one thing was last week I was usually get on Sundays I get my bath and whatever, and then they changed the bedding and stuff on the bed. Well, they didn't get around to it, and they didn't get around to it, and they didn't get around to it. Finally, I just mentioned to somebody that my bedding had been changed. So this nice girl came in, and she said she should make the bed or whatever like that. Well, I happened to be listening to who I listen online.
Yeah.
actually wasn't him. He had somebody else fill in for him. But all of a sudden, the next day she goes to me, she goes, "Who did you have on? I was listening to your and she is so good."
Aw.
And I said, "Well, that made me feel good that I, didn't turn the thing off,
Right.
continued, because sometimes you just want to turn the thing off and then you can come back to it or whatever like that."
Right.
And so I for that church that I went, I listened to, and I said, "You can listen anytime to the, whatever." I said, "Check in with him because he didn't speech that night anyhow." But I said, "She has affiliation with that church." I said, "She does come in once in a while, and I said, she must have her own podcast and stuff too." I said, and she said when she taught, she said she made so much sense to her.
Yeah.
So it was like this girl is searching.
Yeah, that's
And
awesome.
and then that was kind of, and the other thing I was going to say when you said, you might not be the person that, whatever like that. Maybe, you're not going to bring in crowds or whatever. And I remember the story of Billy Graham. Billy Graham, I forgot exactly what denomination he was at the time. But anyhow, he wanted to be a baseball player.
Okay.
And that was his biggest thing. That was his goal. He wanted, he loved baseball, and he thought, and whatever like that. And he was a teenager and stuff like that. He obviously got with the baseball and stuff. And then, but at his house, they used to meet from whatever church his parents belonged to, and they would pray for someone to come that could share the gospel to the people, whatever like that. They had prayed him into his ministry.
Nice.
Can you imagine? I mean, like every week they had been praying, and all of a sudden he became, and look at how many people he touched.
Right.
And I said, but just to be in with that group of, they prayed for him.
Yeah.
Just to, they took their time out and prayed for a person.
Mhm.
And that's how he was born.
Nice.
Basically into his ministry.
Thank you.
I thought that was the story.
Yeah, that was very good. Thank you.
Never know. I said by lifting people up with prayer, whether doesn't have to be one of your family members. It just to be
Right.
someone that obviously that that knows you. You don't know, like even at one place where I was at, that was during COVID and stuff, and we had one of my aides. That night, God impressed on me to pray for this man because he just was tired or whatever.
Right.
And he drove home. He drove from here to Fond du Lac. That's where he usually. And he was Pentecostal too. And there was something that God impressed on me to pray for this man. And on the way home, he blew out a tire to his truck, went down the embankment, flipped over 4 times.
Dang.
Didn't come out with it. It came out with it out of scratch.
Wow.
And then of course they thought, well, it was the seatbelt. And he goes, no, that was God.
Yeah.
And then 2 days later he came back to work, and he gave me a hug, and he goes, I knew it was you praying for me. And I said, well, when God tells you to pray.
Right.
And and that's the whole thing. When God impresses on us, whether we want to do this or don't do this, just like Moses. He wanted him to lead these people out. And Moses, said this, I can't talk in front of these people.
Yeah.